Hello, and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today, we look into a mercenary unit that has worked with Comstar and played a key role in the rise of the Word of Blake without ever working for them. They are a strange unit with a very unconventional history. Today, we are discussing Brion's Legion. There are two different insignia for Brion's Legion. They appear to use them in different eras, but it is not clear when they were swapped. The older image is a silhouette of a bear's paw. Later, they used a bear's paw print on a split circle. It is painted on the left rear shoulder of the mechs, the flank of the vehicles, and the left tail fin of aerofighters. The 1st Regiment uses a Roman numeral 1, and the 2nd Regiment uses a Roman numeral 2. They are painted on the right shoulder of mechs, right bumper of vehicles, and right tail of aerofighters. The regiments also have secondary symbols. The 1st uses a pair of damaged mech legs on a horizontal split green and blue background. The 2nd uses a gladius, dividing a square into red and blue triangles. The secondary symbol is painted on the upper left leg of their mechs. They use a green camo paint scheme, but will change the design when the terrain requires it in order to have proper camouflage. Thus, any camouflage painted unit can function as a substitute for Brion's Legion on the tabletop. Brion's Legion has a history that ties into some important battles. If you want to skip spoilers, then go to the time listed. The origins of Brion's Legion are unclear. What is known is that Pythonius Brion was able to gather a group of soldiers and enough equipment to make something close to a regiment of mechs. After they were formed, it is known that Brion's Legion would sign a contract with the Draconis Combine in 3013. This would not be a good contract for this fledgling mercenary unit. In 3021, the Federated Sons would attack the Tancredi system. Brion's Legion would be stationed on Tancredi II and would take heavy damage in the fighting, and they may have encountered McKinnon's company, who was part of this assault. The AFFS assault would also take Tancredi IV, which pushed the Combine completely out of the system by 3022. They would continue to work for the Combine by mostly being border defense. By 3025, Brion's Legion would be only made up of 2 underpowered battalions and stationed on Murchison. They would attempt to rebuild with limited success. The Draconis Combine would push forward into the weak points of the Federated Sons' defensive line as the war began. Brion's Legion would work with the 9th Dairon Regulars to invade the world of David. The 2 units would deal damage to the 12th Deneb Light Cavalry. The 12th would be able to hold the line due to the local militia and civilian assistance. In 3029, things would go badly for Brion's Legion. The 12th Deneb would set up traps and use civilian spotters to target the leadership of the Legion. Pythonius Brion would get killed in the fighting. The Legion would nearly fall apart before they decided to run away to the local HPG in order to seek sanctuary from Comstar. Their contract would be picked up by Comstar, and Takashi Karita would be fine with the change as he considered the Legion to be nothing more than honorless cowards. The battle for David would shift as the 41st Avalon Hussars arrived and helped the 12th Deneb defeat the 9th Dairon. The world would remain in Federated Sons' control. As for the Legion, Octavius Brion would take control and would be offered a contract from Precentor Marshal Anastasius Vogt. Brion accepted, and his unit was brought back up to regimental strength. Their mechs would be made up of Star League level tech and would function as a visible military for Comstar in order to help keep the Comguard's size and power a secret. The Legion would defend various Comstar assets over the next 2 decades. Over the years, the members of Brion's Legion would get special training by Comstar, which improved their combat capabilities. They would be stationed on Terra once the clan invasion began, as guards while the Comguard prepared for the Battle of Tukian. They would be part of the Home Guard, but retain their individuality as a mercenary unit, and use typical Inner Sphere military structure. By 3054, the unit would be made up of 2 regiments. With the shift in politics and the contracts available in the Chaos March, Brion's Legion would end their contract with Comstar in 3058. This would have major consequences, as the Word of Blake would run a false flag operation as the 21st Centauri Lancers, and began a conquest of Terra, which occurred after Brion's Legion left Terra, and before the 21st Centauri could arrive on Terra. This would assist the Word of Blake in their rise to power, and the 21st would have to face the crimes committed in their name, and defend themselves to the Mercenary Review and Bonding Commission. Meanwhile, Brion's Legion would take up a contract and be stationed on Pleone. Their inexperience with contract negotiations would cause trouble when working with the local militia, but they were able to repel the 12th Fagan Rangers who were on contract to the Federated Suns. With their contract complete, Brion's Legion would move on to other minor conflicts in the Chaos March until 3059. At that time, they would take up a more lucrative contract with the Lyran Alliance. They would begin their garrison work on Tomons, defending the border of the clan-occupied zone. Brion's Legion would remain guarding the clan occupation zone border, and in 3064, they would be called to battle on Rosselgethi against Clan Jade Falcon. They would be teamed up with the Kellenfold Pandora Theater Militia. They would face off with 4 clusters of the Jade Falcon Row Galaxy. The Kellenfold PTM were defeated in a month, but Brion's Legion was able to hold out due to adjusting their tactics to deal with the Falcons. They used hit and run maneuvers, they set up ambushes, and created diversions to divide the enemy forces. This bought enough time for Snord's irregulars to show up as reinforcements. They would destroy a cluster, but it was not long before both mercenary teams and the surviving Lyran soldiers had to flee the world. By the end of the fighting, the Legion's 1st Regiment was heavily damaged, but their reputation was significantly improved. Brion's Legion would return to their post on Tomons in order to rebuild. Not long after that, the 1st Regiment would be moved to Cremond. By the end of the Civil War, both units were mostly rebuilt. Brion's Legion would remain on garrison duty on 2 worlds in early 3068. The 1st Regiment went to Mizar, and the 2nd would be stationed on Bolon. The world of Mizar would be attacked by the Free Worlds League. The Steel Guards would defeat the not fully rebuilt 1st Regiment and capture the world. However, in 3069, the 1st Regiment returned at full strength and took the world back for the Lyran Alliance. Then, in the early 3070s, there would be a skirmish with the Word of Blake for control of the HPG. The Word of Blake decided to destroy their own base rather than lose it. After the fighting was over, many secondary locations were heavily damaged, but the HPG remained mostly intact. Despite the win, the Word of Blake would take the world in 3076, and it seems likely they were able to rout Brion's Legion. The 2nd would be defending Bolon. They would fight the 52nd Shadow Division in 3074. The 2nd Regiment would be shattered and cease to function as a unit. The world of Bolon would have its capital razed, and the governing rulers would flee. The Word of Blake would do a 2nd raid, but never chose to hold the world, leaving it in Lyran control. As the war came to a close, the remains of Brion's Legion would be transferred to Sanhoa in order to rebuild and defend the heavily damaged world and their nearly destroyed Starcore Industries production facilities. By 3079, Brion's Legion would be down to 1 regiment at 65% effectiveness. As the Dark Age began, Brion's Legion would remain at their post on Sanhoa during the rebuilding of the world. By 3085, they were at full strength once again, but had not replaced their 2nd Regiment. However, they would be moved from their station on Sanhoa in order to guard other border worlds for the Lyrans. In the early 3100s, Sanhoa would gain independence and grow into an important industrial world working with Clan Seafox. In the 3120s, they would get attacked by the Final Gaze, a very well-equipped pirate force. The planetary leadership would call in Brion's Legion to assist in stopping the pirates. The Legion worked with local forces to defeat the pirates and keep Sanhoa safe for decades. They would get known for chasing down raiders and destroying their bases. By the beginning of 3152, Brion's Legion was still on contract with Starcore Industries to defend Sanhoa. However, they were sent off-world to hunt pirates across the periphery, leaving the world vulnerable as part of a plot by members of Star Corps to steal a good amount of money and tech to start up a new company. While Brion's Legion was away, the Screaming Eagles would be brought in to defend the world. The criminal behind the scheme would get away with her crime, but Star Corps remained intact and the periphery pirates would be beat up by Brion's Legion. That is where the current history concludes. Brion's Legion falls into the generic mercenary category. They play a minor role in several major battles, but beyond that, they just appear as a filler unit when one is necessary. Their work in the Dark Age is vague, and while they're away from Sanhoa, a criminal was allowed to get away partially because Star Corps and Sea Fox refused to prosecute. Anyhow, at least they played a part in the Chaos March, which is one of my favorite war zones. Due to the odd history of the unit, there are not many notable mech warriors. Pythonius Brion, the founder of the unit. However, it is unclear how he put the unit together. He would command them during the rough early years of the unit and die on David during the Fourth Succession War. Octavius Brion, the son of Pythonius, who would take command in 3029 when his father died. He would lead the team into their Comstar contract, and eventually take the better trained version of the unit into the Chaos March. He'd help keep the unit strong even after the chaos of the Ward of Blake War. He piloted a King Crab, Richard K.O. Merriweather. He was a skilled mech warrior and captain of the 2nd Company of the 1st Regiment in 3057. He would rise to the rank of XO under the command of Octavius in 3067. He would get his nickname due to his skill at knocking down enemies with well-placed attacks. He was able to take out 2 clan mechs with no support using this technique. He piloted a Crockett, Giles Barners. He was the commander of a team of black-painted awesome battle mechs during the early days of the unit. He was a large man who claimed he could not fit in smaller mechs. He had 56 confirmed mech kills by 3025, and by 3039 he'd have 71 kills. His team would be the rear guard of the Legion when they fled to neutral Comstar territory during the Battle of David. He piloted an awesome Sheila Olsen. She was the Recon Lance Commander of the 3rd Company of the 3rd Battalion of the 2nd Regiment. She was known for speeding around the battlefield and causing chaos amongst enemy forces. By 3067, she would be the commander of the 1st Battalion and be a bit more cautious with her tactics. She pilots a Mongoose. Brion's Legion is a typical mercenary unit until the end of the Fourth Succession War. They had poor training and discipline, as well as common mechs. After taking the contract with Comstar, their gear would be brought up to Star League levels, and they potentially got some Clan Buster variants. It also appears that they either bought or were gifted a jump ship at some point during their time with Comstar. Their structure is rather unique. While they do have a regimental command lance, they have no battalion-level command lances. One of the unique things about Brion's Legion is that they can swap between Inner Sphere and Comguard formations with very little effort. This allows them to adjust to various conditions on the battlefield. During their time with Comstar, they did not have infantry or armor support. They added support while in the Chaos March. 1st Regiment got a regiment of mixed vehicle support, including artillery, and eventually added a wing of aerofighters. The 2nd Regiment would have a single support regiment made up of a mix of artillery, infantry, and aerospace. The 1st Regiment was nicknamed David's Lesson and would use long-range bombardment when the enemy got close. The heavies would move in, with lighter units doing flanking strikes. The 2nd Regiment was nicknamed Brion's Legacy. They would use long-range attacks and traps to disorient the enemy before using fast units to do hit-and-run maneuvers and draw the enemy into more traps or long-range assaults. While they may begin as a typical mercenary unit, their history changes how they function and makes them far more powerful than the average unit. There is some fiction, but none of it uses Brion's Legion as the point of view unit. Also, they are only a reference in a Skulk of Foxes. Beyond that, they have plenty of information in sourcebooks, including a technical readout entry. There are also several books with location and formation data. Brion's Legion is another mercenary unit that I chose at random. I saw their name in several books and came across them occasionally when going through the lore of other units. The big standout of the Legion is that they worked for Comstar for a few decades, which also keeps them off the battlefield. It makes sense there isn't much fiction, and I imagine they won't be coming up as an important unit in any upcoming sourcebooks. That being said, they have a unique history, which makes them an interesting footnote in the history of BattleTech. Building a unit of Brion's Legion isn't something I'd recommend for anyone outside of major Chaos March players. However, there are some advantages to making this unit. First off, they use Comstar units, making the Comstar Force Packs an easy way to build a quick company of these units. Also, they use a camo paint scheme, which can substitute for a lot of different units as well. Or if you already have a camo paint set of battle mechs, they can always play the role of Brion's Legion for a specific game. Next time, I am covering the 36th Dairon Regulars, and after that, I'll be looking into another mercenary unit. Then I will be going into the Lyran Commonwealth in April, so look forward to those videos. Thank you for watching. I am so glad that the channel keeps growing. May your weapons stay hot and your reactors stay cool. Please check out more of my BattleTech faction briefing videos. And until next time, I'll see you at the tavern.